All right, I guess we're recording. Oh, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a little bit of review first to kind of be able to catch us up so that we know where we left off last time with the wise and foolish virgins.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because there was a lot of information, and that's what I found so profound last week when we shared, is that for such a short verse that somebody would just glance over, like, okay, there's 5 wise and 5 foolish, I got this thing. And then to dig and see how much true information was going on in that verse, because we were talking about that the number 5 was huge amount of information. We were talking about being trained up as an army, right? About being armed and equipped. And then also about the vanguard in leading the way in new developments. And I thought that was very interesting that this verse would capture that. And then there was a division within it that had to do with the wise and the foolish. And we went through this and talking about that the wise was talking about a scholar, a prudent and skillful, learned individual, that what was being taught was conducive to being successful and having favor. And it also meant to be prepared, prepared, appointed, to prepare, and to appoint, which huge when you connect it back with the first word about being armed and equipped. So being armed and equipped, being called, prepared, and appointed. And then we drop down to what it said about being foolish. And to be able to do a proper segue on this, the word foolish here, we had that fallen noon. So there was something about the fallen flesh and our beast ego nature that this really wanted us to take a close look at in the process of being prepared and being equipped to become wise, to be a scholar. It's dealing with something that you wouldn't see in English when you just read the word foolish, because then it morphs. And there was a reason why I wanted to share this, because this next verse, you would be scratching your head. But, well, I guess if you read it in English, you wouldn't be scratching your head. But when you look at it, it's like, okay, so why did these letters change? And that's what's so profound and why I love teaching this stuff, to be able to share, to see that deep water as to why these movements are happening, because it changes the progression of the whole parable. The entire parable changes from what we have been given. And so we were talking about how when the wise come, so we were talking about the bride and the groom, when they come to this group of people, there are going to be some that are going to see this as being foolish. And they're going to be confused. And because of the mirror principle, they are going to project that foolishness back upon you, because the ego can't handle anything new. The ego can't handle anything that it is already ascertained as being its truth. And it's very, very difficult to challenge ego unless one has tamed their ego and chooses to be teachable. It is going to be flat out rejected. And I think it's funny, just to let you know, I had something on YouTube, and I just got to share this because I just didn't get it. On one of the teachings, and I believe it was on this one specifically, there was a person that put a comment, and they did 3 squirrels. They just did 3 squirrels. And I had no idea what that meant. I mean, I literally had no idea what it meant. And I was like, oh, maybe you can help me understand. What? It was like they were saying you're nuts. The squirrel gathers nuts, and it was their kind of way of saying that you're nuts. And I just didn't see it as my mirror in the reflection. I just didn't see it. So I thought it was funny. But this goes right back to show that when we present these new concepts to ego, it's going to confuse the ego, and the ego is going to say it's foolish. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And the potentiality is that they're going to project that foolishness upon you. And so I'm actually glad that I saw this to help me realize that what am I dealing with when we're talking to people and sharing these new ideas, when that gets projected back on it. It's like, okay, that's a pushback from the ego. That is not from them. That is not from their spirit, because the spirit is pure and innocent. That's
well, it isn't. I mean, if it's the way I see squirrely is like when you are coming up on a squirrel in the road, and it can't decide whether to go or go back or go back, and it'll be squirrely.
And that could be you. The person
And
never
so,
answered me.
yeah.
So I had somebody else give me an answer, but this beautiful woman, I adore her. She changed it positively. It's like she let me know what she felt was being said, but she was talking about how nuts have protein, and this is superpower protein. And
Oh no.
It was absolutely.
No, I think when people say something squirrely, that's what they're referring to.
Well, it's probably an and. It's probably
Yeah.
an and, Regina. An and. I wouldn't say it's an or. I think it's an and because I could see it. But regardless, they're gonna say something that's projecting this new information is difficult for them to grasp a hold of. And so maybe for them, maybe they're right. Maybe it is a squirrely. Which way do I go? You know, do I go to the right? Do I go to the left? What do I do? What do I do? I don't know how to handle this information. Regardless, it's usually because of that not noon that's in the fallen position, we know we're dealing with ego here.
Yeah,
But
sure.
the progression is what I'm most interested in, that we talked about, going from the sheen to the samek. And when we look at that, we were able to see that in that progression, that samek is a picture of the wedding ring. This is the place where we're hedged in, propped in, and supported. So the answer and the resolve to the fallen flesh comes through the letters. And so the very first principle of this is going through the fire of purification, which would have been the sheen before the samek, making ourselves ready to be wed, to get rid of the beast ego. And when we looked at the Hebrew word, which is the exact mirror of this, but through the Hebrew divine masculine, it talks about showing oneself attentive, to look and to understand, to consider, to see it as instruction, to comprehend it, to making one wise. It goes right back to the wise of the that we looked at before at the top. And so I wanted to bring this up so that we would consider where we came from in the verse before as we continue moving on into the next verse, which we're drilling down a little bit deeper. And again, we were connecting this to the first time that this word was used was with Chava in the garden, about looking at the tree of good and evil. That this tree was in duality, was to make us wise. And again, so we can see the division between the foolish and the wise, duality. So no wonder why this word was used in the very first occurrence to deal with the tree of duality. So now moving on, I did want to point out something that was very interesting in here, because this word that I highlighted, where we're talking about wisdom, I was just looking up different words, and I came upon Jeremiah 3:15, talking about the shepherds. Then I will give you shepherds according to my heart, who will feed you with knowledge and with understanding. So we've been talking about the shepherds of light, the teachers, the instructions that will come. And here's that word again for understanding. So in one regard, it's foolish and foolishness, but on the other side, it has to do with understanding that is connected to wisdom. So as the bride and the groom come to these people, they are the shepherds that are feeding to present knowledge, to make you wise so that you can comprehend and have understanding. And this word right here, so here's the word, this is actually, it's funny because shepherd's above, but here's literally the same word for shepherd. But this is also the same word for evil. So within the dual system, you're going to have shepherds of truth, and then you're going to have shepherds that are in the opposite, that would be considered as evil. because the message that they're bringing you, and in this one, this message that is being brought is connected to mother and connected to father, to raise you up from being poor and destitute so that you would have the eyes to see. And these are the ones that are leading you to the pastures so that you can feed and take what you need to grow up and mature yourself. And then the very next word is the Aleph Tav. It's Strong's number 853, but they added the Kaf Mem to it. So the shepherds are bringing to you something to yoke you to, a cup that is meant to be filled so that you can be in the waters of shalom instead of the waters of chaos, where now you have da'ah. This is the root to da'at, the hidden sephirot on the tree of life that the Kabbalists, that some say there's there, and some Kabbalists say that it isn't. But this is the root of meaning intimate understanding, knowledge that has been hidden, and it has the hay added to it. So the shepherds are going to be bringing you through the Aleph Tav, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet to the last letter, that which you can tame yourself to, into the waters of shalom and completion, that are going to bring you knowledge. And that comes through the revelation of the Father's teaching. That is what makes one wise and have understanding. So we not only have the Father here, but we have Mother's revelation here. So within these two words, knowledge and understanding shows that it goes hand in hand with Mother and Father. Her revelatory teaching, his revelatory teaching, that are meant to give you knowledge and understanding. So I just, that's a small little segue. There's a lot more that I could say about this verse because it is connected to the heart, according to the heart, so that you have authority on the inside that gives you power. So in identifying who these shepherds are, who the bride and the groom are, who are coming to bring this beautiful message to the wise and foolish, to equip them, everything that we said above, to arm them, to equip them, to make them prudent and skillful, to appoint them, to prepare them, as an army, as a vanguard. All of that is connected, and these shepherds are coming to bring this. Now this takes us to the next verse. And the next verse reads, "They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them." Is that what it really says, though? Generally not.
Yeah, I bet not.
Generally not. What we see in English is usually the exact opposite. And this is why I wanted to talk to you about, especially about that last word, about foolish, because if I show it back here, it makes it a little easier without all my notes. The first foolish that we saw had the fallen flesh on it. Samek, Kaf Lamed, and we were also talking about the Kaf Lamed is the Aramaic word for bride and for crown. So those who are married would have the crown, whereas the bride, and if they're given a crown, then that does mean that they're married and they're queen. And so that's what's supposed to happen, but you're in fallen flesh. But then we transition into verse 3, and now look at what it says. There's the same root. Look what's added. The Tav and the Aleph. That is a huge, huge change. Huge change. Fallen flesh to now being marked with the Father's covenant as one who's exempt from judgment, and now you've been made as one. So this can no longer be foolish. There's something else going on here that's much deeper, much, much, much deeper. It's actually really exciting. So in the beginning, those who were confused, those who were a little foolish in responding to the message that was coming, something changed. So let's take a look at what happened prior to that. And again, if we weren't digging this out in English, you would never see this, because on the English front end of it, it just is a word that means that, those, and who. That doesn't tell us much at all.
No.
But the root is Havav. Hey Vav. And this root also means and is connected to turning. So that and those are those who came that were connected to mother. Because again, so going back, the root is Hey Vav. So this is really this Vav Hey. This is the same gematria of what was in the root, but something happened. It got flipped. So it was like revelation that you need to connect to in the static form, lump of clay. It's not being activated. This is an activated form of that, those, and who. Something happened. Well, Vav, humility happened. Vav is connecting to mother in humility and teachability. So these foolish from the previous verse that were fallen flesh then connected to mother and decided that they should be teachable here. So I'm saying this as a positive reminder that just because this message may come to somebody at the beginning and they may see it as being foolish, at some point, those exact people that it is foolish to are going to connect to it. And I want to reframe our thinking so that we just don't set those people aside and say, we can't touch them. They are so ingrained and established in their religious dogma that I can't move them. Well, it's not our job to move them. It's the Spirit's job to move them. We are just messengers. The Spirit has to move them first. So generally what will happen, message will come, response is, this is foolish, this is gobbledygook, I'm not going to listen because their ego's rising up. But when they leave, the Spirit in the form of mother, right hand side, is going to pierce them, hence the Vav, the nail. It's going to pierce them. And that's generally when they walk away, when they're not being confronted in the moment. So what happened between the verse 2 and the verse 3 is that these allowed the message to pierce them, and they connected to mother and the revelation that she was bringing to them about the spiritual path that they needed to take. And it was given to them, this seed vision, this yod, same gematria as kazah, meaning to have a vision. The same vision was given to them so that they could do something with their fallen flesh. So in presenting a message to someone, which this is new, we have to be very sensitive to the ego and what the ego is trying to do, because the ego is trying to protect itself at all costs, especially when it gets into the fear mode. When it thinks that maybe the foundation that it has been standing on is wrong, there's going to be a pushback. And this is why it's so important to let the Spirit go ahead of us when we do these things, if we are sharing and we're led to, because it's that very nature of the Spirit going before us that has already begun to prepare the soil in the first place so the seed can be planted and they can connect to it, if they choose to be humble and teachable and listen to it, because the hay is connected to the Spirit. And it also means, hen means lo and behold. So, hey, lo and behold, the foolish from the verse before connected to the message. The revelation came. They saw the spiritual path, and they took that which was given to them, the open hand, that gave them the power to be able to see, first of all, that they had a fallen flesh nature, but also to give them what they needed to do something with it. Now, through that process, we have the change in the form of the word. We now have the Tav Aleph. So they took the revelation. Lo and behold, they took the revelation of the spiritual path, and now they are of those who completed their journey. They regarded the message and they considered it, and they did something with it. They did something with it.
And it can be surprising, because sometimes people that you would never think would, they're staunch and you just don't think they're going to move.
Exactly.
And they do. It's a spirit thing, you know,
It is. That's
coming
why
in and
that's why the Vav is so important,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that connecting through the spirit of mother is what
yeah.
starts our journey. You know, it's like, oh, and it's beautiful because you think about it, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit,
Hmm.
feminine in nature,
Yeah.
mother spirit, connecting and bringing this revelation of the spiritual path.
Like a depth, and for me, how I see this is the Vav equates to a 6, and it's the heart space that is that place of deep meaning and emotions, and it's an experience that I infrequently have, but when I do it, I can see how people can be. It's almost it's the initial awakening happens in that, the revelation of like seeing through it, the heart space, or
I agree.
and that being pierced, and then realizing the depth, and then
Hmm.
choosing to enact or not, I guess. But it's, you know, just a glimpse can allow
Shakes everything up.
shake things up, or allow one to, you know, maybe move in a different direction than
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
so.
exactly what's going on here, Jesse. You described it perfectly. That's exactly what's going on here. That piercing of man, of the number 6, and this revelation came, and lo and behold, they were given the power to do something with it, and then they did. So then the prophecy, if you want to think about it this way, the prophecy, like we were discussing earlier, the teleological, I'm going to zoom out through the binoculars and I'm going to see where I'm supposed to head, has now come into view and has now been made manifest, because now they are the bride, they are the queen, they did get crowned, they are marked with the Father's covenant, which means they're now exempt from judgment, and they've become one. That is so beautiful. It's like, oh, be able to see this
Hmm.
prophetic, beautiful picture and be able to declare it over people. You know, focus our attention on it, focus our prayer time, our meditation on sending this vibration out so that people that don't have hope can have hope and
Yeah.
expectancies. There's like this pregnant expectancy based on what is written prophetically, that is teleologically telegraphing to us where we are heading, if we allow it to pierce us and connect to it by becoming
Yeah.
humble and teachable.
Yeah.
So that already changes the whole process of this whole verse, because it
Mhm.
said foolish, they didn't take, the foolish took their lamps and they took no oil with them. That is not what's going on here. That is not what's going on here whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the next word that we see, how funny. I love it when it does this. Word always flips my letters around on me. Is Nun Semek Bet. And it means that we've already talked about this, the take and receive hypocrite. This was in the very first verse that we were looking at, all the way back here at the beginning. Where is it in the sub? There it is. On the very first word, we were looking at this, and this was the active form of it. This was, it had the dalet added in front, and it became the judges that were the flags, signs, miracles, beacons, ness. And so now we're looking at that in this verse after what we were just talking about. So this is a static form of it. And this is what's so profound to connect to for me, because this is like a fresh revelation for me, actually. When we look at the word in the static form, I say it's a lump of clay all the time. And it is. It's potential. But that doesn't mean that it's not doing something. It's potential, meaning the root is source. The root is creator. The root is you. So these who were foolish, who now have become wise, they understood It made them wise. They gave attention to it. They pondered it. They became it. They're now in the static form, 0 point. Potential energy with no distortion one way or the other. They are the miracles. They are the beacons. They're the ones that went around. They are the mature ones, because remember we were looking at the wise before. The word sage meant one who is scholarly, one who has been made wise, a wise man. Again, male and female, it makes no difference. There's vibrational frequencies that is irregardless. It's like, it doesn't matter the sexual orientation of the flesh, because in the spirit, there is no sex. So in the spirit, there is no sex. There's no sex orientation. It is. So this lump of clay is the place of source, full of potential with no distortion. So these that were foolish, who then became wise, it shows they're in place in 0 point as source, as creator, without any distortion, are those who took the spiritual path in going around and around, because this is from Sabib, which means to go around in circles. So they were the ones that took the spiritual path in going around in circles, that became wed, hedged in, supported, propped up, that built themselves, and now they're in the place of a static position as source. But this is it. This is really a bigger revelation here, in that in the process of us becoming as one with source, we have the potential, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be kinetic. So this is like static. It's a hold position of potential energy that hasn't been kinetic one way or another. So when we say letters added and deleted, that makes it potential, or takes or kinetic energy. It takes that potential, not doing anything, in the place of 0 point, all possibilities open, potentiality is wide to go to the right, go to the left, but yet they're in the place of static potential, not kinetic. They have actually entered into rest. I'm not going to the right. I'm not going to the left. I am right, dead set in the middle between right and left. I have found my place of rest.
Okay.
And it tells you how they did it. So in this part of potentiality, there is no distortion here. And so the difficulty is that if people are still in the fallen flesh, they can take a look and judge somebody and say that they're being, for whatever, they can be judging, or they can come across as play acting something that they haven't become. Because we still have the ability to do that. But again, this is in a place of static. There is no kinetic. It's not being activated one way or another. It's just potentiality, which is what source is. Source is the creator of everything, is in a potential state of all the time, in the center of creation, in the static form, because it created and is now in the is space. It is. And so the root is. It's not a doing, it's not a work, it is. So that is the morphology of where this came from, of who they are. And initially it had a dalet in front of it in the previous verse. In verse 1, there is no dalet. So it's saying that these are no longer judging. That is why they're in the static position. They don't need to know this or that. They found what they needed to through the spiritual path by going around in circles, finding what they needed to hedge and support themselves in, being shielded by thorns so that they could build love, bet tov. They could build as a daughter, which again is just a frequency. And this is the place of maturity. And then it's interesting to talk about the lamp. And I was laughing about this because literally the first 3 letters of the word lamp, if you phonetically sound out this Aramaic word, it's lamp. Lamed sounds like an L. Mem sounds like an M. And the pei, since it's a hard one, it's got a dagesh in there, sounds like the P. mean, you can obviously see how the alphabet came from the Aleph Bayit Ivri. And this literally is phonetically how you spell lamp. So it's just interesting that that's what they said, but it also means the word for light. Lamp and light.
Or one of, there's multiple words for light. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But this is something very specific that you would never ever see unless you're digging. And when your eyes get more attuned to the language, then you get to see these little deeper revelations that are these little nuggets that when they pop out at you, you know, like once you see them, you can't unsee them. They're there. The first 4 letters here is, if you take the pay out of there, you would have lamed, mem, dalet, which is the constituent letters that spell the symbol lamed. And it means to instruct, to teach. That's what lamed means. That's what the Hebrew word lamed means, to instruct and to teach. And right in the middle of the word to instruct and teach, we have the pay. So there's a mouth that is coming to speak to the inside of you, to bring revelation, to teach you, to instruct you on the inside. That's why the pay was inserted in the middle of the root, the static form of potential, that the lamed got activated, the word meaning to instruct and teach got activated into a kinetic form of doing instead of just being in the static, with the pay, the mouth that speaks revelation, meant to deal with you on the inside. Because as a lamp, this is symbolic that we are to be the light. We are to be the light of the world. But the mouth is going to be speaking revelation meant for you on the inside. So when the teacher comes and presents and instructs the way of the living water, and it is speaking these revelations, it is a door to open. They are the door to open this revelation up to you to say, hey, you need to go on the inside. This is all an inside job here. Because they're bringing the light. And you as a lamp, you're meant to shine. But then, it goes even further than that, because right here, Yod He Yod. And I know that you wouldn't know this yet, Jesse, and so I'm going to share this with you. The root Haya, He, Yod He, is the root that we get Yod He Vav He from, the tetragrammaton. It's the root. But what we're seeing here is what you will see many times in the Old Testament. This is the active form of the static potential into becoming. It's the Yod of mother and the Yod of father. Vision of mother, vision of father, and right in between is revelation. And Yod, and then the root Haya means to be, to come, and to come to pass. So this lamp, this instruction is coming so that you can be, become, and come to pass as something necessary that is giving you the instruction through the living water teachings, the mouth that speaks revelation to your inside, that is going to open this door up to you to give you first the vision of mother, which then will reveal the vision of father that has to do with your fallen flesh. So this is kind of like a summary of the process of taking your lamp of who you are in making you light. I know that's a lot. And so in moving on, again, the word no, there's never a no when it comes to Hebrew and Aramaic, because everything is experience. So whenever you see the no, especially in Aramaic, it is telling you through the letters, you need instruction in the way of one. So through all of this process that was created and presented before, It's saying, connect in humility, be pierced by the teaching that is coming to you to present the way of one to you. Because in this state, with the fallen noon, you're still in ego. You still have the fallen flesh that has the ego attached to it. And so Mother's instruction is coming to teach you the way of one in how to deal with this. And it's being presented to two visions, one of Mother, one of Father, that brings the revelation of how to do it. But you have to connect to the instruction to make it happen. And that's why this isn't a static word. It's potential that has been activated as one who has been pierced, like we were talking about the very first word in this verse. So it's saying in your potential, you are a signal and a miracle as a flag in just the state of who you are, because you went through the teachings, you connected to them in becoming one. So now the miracle, so connect this, Jesse, to A Course in Miracles. What is the Course in Miracles talking about mainly? The ego, right? So as the Course of Miracles in Miracles is talking about ego and what to do with the ego, we're seeing that process right here with these three words. This instruction will allow you to deal with the fallen flesh ego if you can connect to the teachings of one so that you can be the miracle. So then we have the word with. And again, in English, very diminished. You would just glance over it. You would have no idea what is being said. The root is right here, Jesse. And this means, if you look at it and you trace it down, it means to be in its essence of combining the Hebrew and the Aramaic together, which are meant to be overlaid and then become one. In the Hebrew thought, when you would see this word it specifically means people, tribesmen, specifically Jacob, the tribes of Israel. And it talks about a sheep and a flock. And we were talking earlier about how the shepherds come to lead the sheep into the pastures where they can get the knowledge and the understanding that they need. And so this is now drilling it down a little bit further and saying to the people, specifically of the tribesmen of Israel, who have been dimmed. They have been dimmed. So again, going back to lamp and light, their light has been dimmed. But again, you wouldn't see it. Translators use the word with, but this is packed full of information because their light has been dimmed. Their lamp, as containing light, has been dimmed. They've been darkened. They're weak. They've been weakened. But this exact same word means to join and connection. And what are they joining to? So the weakened and the dimmed are joining to what? The tribesmen of Israel are joining to what? They are being given the eyes to see the fountain that is within them, so they can see how to deal with their fallen flesh through the living water teachings, Mother first, because Father is hidden behind because of that mem and the mem sophit. You don't see Father's teachings, you see Mother first. And the revelation is added on the suffix side. Because remember, here's the root. Ein mem. So anything that was added after that, this is all pertaining to Father's teachings. So those who have been darkened and dimmed are having a revelation come to them that is from the Father's teaching. It will be revealed to them, and they will be given the power, means, and direction to be able to go through the door in their inner man to figure out exactly what they need to deal with that fallen flesh. And that's why we've been dimmed. Adam and Eve were given skins. They were dimmed. The fallen consciousness, the beast ego attached to the flesh. So this is letting us know that there's something coming to deal with that. We don't have much more to go here. Actually, this is the last word. So in the dimming process, this revelation is coming to them so that they can figure out exactly what they need through the Father's teaching, the hidden esoteric side of the spiritual language that is meant to be instructed. Go on the inside, the mouth that speaks revelation, to the inside of your lamp so you can become light. But in order to do that, metaphorically, we need oil. We need oil. And this word in its root is Mashaich. And Mashaich in its static form, potential, there's a measurement that goes to it. So there's a measured standard that one meets in order to get the oil for their lamp, which is connected to being anointed. And that comes from the teachings of Father dealing with the fallen flesh so that they can become one. Because the Aleph is now added on the suffix side. That wasn't there. The root is just mem, sheen, het. So that means that the anointing that gets measured to us comes from the living water teachings of Mother and Father, the refining fire, dealing with our fallen beast ego nature, that will separate and divide what is and what is not to bring us to life through the covenant so that we can be one. That is the oil. So this whole verse, it looks like when they're talking about it, that these foolish ones, that they had their lamp, but they didn't have oil. And we saw that that's not the case. It's not the case whatsoever. Lo and behold, they connected to the teachings. They were pierced by them. And then that which may first have appeared foolish and silly, they were able to connect to it because they went away and they considered it. And they wanted to look at it and give attention to consider the possibilities and ponder of what was being presented. And lo and behold, they did connect. So then they went through the process to become those who are marked with Father's covenant as one. And then everything else underneath this, Jess, everything else underneath this is telling us how they did it. Does that make sense? Every single one of these words is telling how these foolish became wise.
Okay.
It was through the instruction. And the only other thing I'm going to add to this so that you can kind of connect to the dot to this, because that's what this whole thing is the instruction that leads us to the anointing. Because I didn't mention it before. I use the word Mashiach, and you know what I'm saying when I say it, but other people don't. Mashiach is the same word for Messiah, is the same word for Christ. So this is the process of obtaining the Christ, activating it within us. Because the potential is there, right here. Here's the potential. Mashaich. The potential is in every single one of us, but it has to be activated. And this was all of the instructions necessary.
Mashaich and oneness.
Mashaich. This was the instructions to get us so that we could understand that the anointing is where we measure ourselves all as one. And when that finally sets in, when it finally really sets in, then we become changed. We become those who were once foolish that have now been made wise. They are marked with the covenant of the Father's love. They are exempt from judgment because they no longer judge because they became one. Judging only happens when you aren't in the oneness mindset of the anointing, because you're still judging this or that, right and wrong, black or white. So that tav comes when the reality hits you and it is manifest in your life that we're all one. Totally changes this whole verse completely. Lo and behold, they changed because they listened to the Spirit and they connected to it through Mother and her revelation. Hey, there's a spiritual path to be taken. I'm going to give you the power, means, and direction to overcome your fallen flesh nature. And they did it.